Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell, behind me is not the TJ and it's not the JK, it's actually our 2015 Grand Caravan, and I need to do a little bit of work on that. Its transmission fluid is leaking out the gasket, so we're going to replace the filter in the gasket and fill it back up. It's supposed to be dealer service only, but it's pretty easy to do it yourself, or at least in theory. Just take off the bottom pan cover, scrape off the gasket, and I've got a replacement filter and then a rubber gasket, so not going to do the RTV. And then there's no dipstick, but there is a fill port, and so we just need to fill it up with fluid and make sure you get it to the right level. We'll go through all that. So hang with me and we'll get to work. I'm on the driver's side. Let me show you what's going on. So this is the side of the transmission here on the driver's side, and you can see, I don't know how well it comes out on the video, but there's a lot of dirt, and looks like actually when you've been driving it for a while, the cover looks wet, and it looks grimy, like there's some oil. So that's what I saw when I was rotating my tires, and it made me want to look at it a little bit further. So now I'll crawl underneath and show you what's going on. So videos underneath vehicles are always kind of hard to actually see what's going on. This van has about 90,000 miles on it. We bought it new, so we're the only owner. Service manual says you don't need to do anything with transmission fluid for, gosh, over 100,000, 120, I don't know. Some other sources though say you should change it every 60. So either way, I think it's time to just change it out, since it's a pretty simple process. But if you look at this bolt right here, it's actually wet, and that's transmission fluid. And you can see over on the transmission over here, it's wet up back here as well. And then on the, let's see if we can get it here on the transmission cover around this corner, it's wet and grimy. So pretty confident that do have a small transmission fluid leak. I've been checking the levels. It's not dropping significantly, but there's definitely something going on. And like I said, it's 90,000 miles. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the pan, replace the filter and the fluid, and hopefully get rid of this leak. All right, there are 12 bolts holding the bottom of the transmission pan up. You can use an 8mm socket, but I find that a 5/16 actually fits a little bit better, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to break the torque on all of them just to make sure that they'll actually move on me. And then my plan is to remove them at the back and leave the ones at the front installed so that the pan can hinge down, and hopefully, if all goes well, the fluid will all show up in the catch pan and not go everywhere in my garage. We'll see how it goes. Someday, I'll be able to not mess up the floor. Today is not that day. You can actually see
the gasket material is missing over here, which is probably why I was having the leak. Magnet is over here, and that's a good amount of gook. It's all really fine particles, so I'm gonna go with the mindset of it's fine, it's just 90,000 miles, and we'll not worry about it. So I'm gonna clean it all out and remove the gasket material, and then get ready to put it back on. I have cleaned off the gasket material from the cover, cleaned out the cover, get some brake clean in there to get it all cleaned out well, magnets cleaned off, took a wire brush to the bolts, so the cover's ready to go back on. Now I need to get up underneath, remove the filter, and clean the mating surface so that the new gasket and filter can go in. To remove the filter, there are two T25 fasteners up here, so they're Torx tips, so you need to have a T25 bit ready, and you just remove the two bolts and then wiggle and pull the filter out, because it's actually sealed up in there as well. There's a seal that you're fighting against. Now before you pull this out, you need to realize that there is still fluid in the filter. So make sure your catch pan is underneath it and dump it into the catch pan. Try not to get it on the floor. Now that the filter's out, the next job is to just clean everything off. Clean any gasket material off the mating surface, and then there's also the seal up here that some videos will say it'll actually come out with the filter. I've never had that experience. So you want to try to remove that as well without damaging the bore. I'm not going to take the risk of damaging the bore, fighting with the seal. I'm just going to go ahead and reuse what's in there. If you disagree with my choice, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments section. But I'm going to go ahead and put the new filter in place. So the new filter goes in the same way the old one came out, and I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description for the filter and gasket that I'm using. But just put this spout back up into the seal, and then tighten, don't over tighten those two Torx tip bolts. Okay, so I have all 12 bolts back in. They're all hand tight. So next I'm going to get out the torque wrench, torque each of them to 105 inch-pounds in an alternating crisscross fashion. Okay, all torqued, triple checked. So now I'm going to put the wheels back on, put it back on the ground, and we'll fill it up. All right, so the van is back on the ground, and the next question is, where do you put the fluid in? So it's kind of hard to find unless you've looked for it a few times. So the easiest thing to do is, there's your battery. Then you've got this main harness running off the battery, and you see how it comes together into like a junction. Underneath it, as right here, is a cap. It's a quarter turn cap, and that's the top of the funnel, or the tube that fills your transmission. So it's a quarter turn. To take the cap off, it's pretty easy. Just unscrew it, take it out, and now you can put a long funnel in there and fill up your transmission fluid. And so that I don't lose this cap, I put it right in this hole. It's perfect. It's like it was designed for. The words of wisdom are to measure the amount of fluid that you pulled out of the transmission and put that much back in. The total capacity is something like 5.5 quarts, but there's still fluid in the transmission, so you don't want to just dump 5.5 quarts into it. You definitely don't want to overfill it.
So you're thinking to yourself, how do you know when it's at the right level? Well, since these don't come with dipsticks, right? So there are hacks out there that you can modify your oil dipstick to give you level readings and just use your oil dipstick. I've done that with mine, and I've marked it, and I'll leave a link to the video I used to show me how to do that. But for this refill, I went and bought an Aftermarket dipstick that I'll also leave a link for, and it has measurements in millimeters to give you a more precise reading, and it also comes with this chart to tell you what your readings should be. So we have a Dodge Grand Caravan. It's a 2015, so we need to use chart B on the back. And so you've got 4 different charts to look at. We're looking at chart B, and I'm gonna do it at a cold reading. And put this back over. It tells me that cold is 2 minutes idling at 55 degrees. It gives you lots of instructions. So cold is the target is around 12 or so millimeters on the dipstick.
So just to wrap things up, I determined that I had pulled out about 5.5 quarts actually from the transmission when I dropped the pan. So I went ahead and put the same amount in, used the instructions for the dipstick, measured the level, and it's pretty much perfect. So I did end up going ahead with putting in what I pulled out, and that seemed to work really well. So I'm all done. It was a pretty straightforward job. It took about an hour and a half to do, and that's with me also doing some of the recording. So I would say maybe an hour and a half if you take your time and double check things as you go. All I have left to do is torque the lug nuts on the van and take it for a test drive. So thanks for watching. If you have questions, comments, please leave them. I'm always looking to improve my content, so if you have any thoughts on that matter as well. And since I'm trying to expand the channel a little bit, any subscriptions you give me will certainly help with that. Thanks a lot, and good luck on your own repairs.